Hey students, how's it going? It's Mr. Lopez. I know it's been a while since I've done a video on a lesson because it's been a long time. It's Mr. Lopez has been really busy, super busy, as I'm sure all of you are very busy. But today I just wanted to make sure I kind of briefly go over this chapter 5 worksheet that I'm going to give to you after this video, as soon as I'm done making this video, so I can kind of show you what is expected of this worksheet, and so that way we can wrap up chapter 5. We are planning on having the quiz for chapter 5, lesson 3, with this worksheet, right? And then our test for the entire thing of chapter 5 will be this Thursday, and it will be due on Tuesday. Okay, so you guys will have quite a bit of time to complete that test and everything like that. But it will be open up Thursday. This worksheet that I'm going to be giving you today is pretty much going to be preparing you for the chapter 5 test, but make sure that you also kind of go over the quizzes, as many of the same questions will be reused. All right, and then also don't forget to look at McGraw-Hill, some of this stuff especially, okay, so that you're getting used to the vocabulary terms that they use in the textbook. That's why I have this portion right here. As soon as you open up your worksheet, you see that I already give you definitions to work with. So what I want you to do is essentially I want you to write a definition for each one of these words on here, and if you see here, I actually added the section of the book in which you will find it in, and hopefully this will be very useful for you during the test as well. So the thing that I wanted to remind you guys about too, if you go click onto the second tab on this thing, right, you will also see that you can work on your supply shifters. Okay, I really want you to make sure that you know which direction a supply curve shifts according to these following supply shifters. We've done this before, it's just been a while since we've done it. I just want to refresh your mind on it. Okay, now the thing that I want you to direct your attention to today is just is more about chapter 5 lesson 2 and then chapter 5 lesson 3. So today is going to be a little bit of extensive when it comes to this video. If you absolutely understand chapter 5 lesson 2, which is these production stages, then you can just skim through this portion of the video until you see me get to the next tab. Now, so today what I'm pretty much want to show you is identifying the stages of production. So what I want you to do is fill out everything that's in yellow. Okay, in fact, for the remainder of this little worksheet here, everything that is yellow, that means that is where the answer goes. That is what we're looking for in an answer. Okay, so in a production schedule, we pretty much see the law of diminishing marginal returns marginal returns come into effect. Just like the law of diminishing marginal utilities, it's very similar. All right, it says here pretty much in this job here, this business, they're adding on one worker each, like in each scenario, right? So they're kind of testing out what is the most effective amount of workers that we can have, and how do you know when you're pretty much good with your type of workers? Well, in terms of your productivity, right? So this is the total product. This column over here is your total product. Now that column right there tells you how much did you produce based off how many workers you have. So you can see here, when the company had 0 workers, they produced 0 products. Okay, when they had 1 worker, they had produced 7 products, and when they had 2, they had 20. Now you might see here that, well, at 11 workers we have, or even at 10 workers we have 148 products. So therefore, I think this is where we should be at. Well, it's very tricky, and we're going to kind of get into that. So imagine if you're a business owner and you're trying to figure out, well, what's the most amount of workers that I need, because I don't need to hire more workers if I'm going to be spending more money. So that is why we have to calculate marginal product. Okay, and how marginal product is calculated, right? It is the change in product, essentially. It is the amount of the amount of the additional product that is made from changing a variable in your production. So, like, for example, adding another worker, or maybe adding another machine. In this example, they're adding another worker. So what we do here is we just want to calculate the change. So essentially here, you're going to click on this cell right here, all right? And then you're going to, well, you should know that from 0 to 0, there is no change. There is no change whatsoever, so you can just start off with 0 on that first one right there, right? Now, what we're also going to do here now is we look over here and we see, well, now the product has changed to 7. Now you can put the number 7 because you know that it changed to 7, right? Or you can do this. You can press the equals. All right, you're going to press equals. Click on the 7, right? Because that is what it currently is, right? It is the new minus the old. That's how you calculate the change, right? Or the marginal product. So you can see right here, I clicked on 7 minus 0. And your answer is 7, okay? That is your marginal product at that production. So if we see right here, we can actually click on this little button here at the bottom and then drag down. Okay, just like in the law of diminishing marginal utilities, this thing right here is calculating your marginal product. So right here, I'm just formulating the tab because when you scroll down, when you drag that thing down, it makes this little line disappear at the bottom. So now we have here our marginal product already calculated for us. Man, don't we love Excel? Heck yeah, we do, because we don't have to do all that math on a piece of paper or in our head. And that's why most economists and most business owners use spreadsheets, students. I totally recommend that. If you are not very comfortable with spreadsheets, get comfortable and try to learn them up, because this is a very hireable skill. Many business owners want to see that people are good at Excel sheets, all right, or spreadsheets. Okay, now we did that though. Now we have to try to identify our stages of production. Now, how is it that we do that? Well, if you remember in the textbook, right? In the textbook, they pretty much made a graph that represented the number of workers and the total product. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and graph that thing too. All right, so we're going to highlight these two columns right here, number of workers and total products. And if you can see over here, we want that over here. So insert production function graph here. So that's where I want you to put it. So we're going to highlight these two columns here, number of workers, total product, all the way down to here, right? We're going to go to insert, and we're going to go over to chart. And it should generate you automatically a chart. You see over here? Perfect. Good stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and drag it right over here. Now, graphically, right, you should be able to see where the 3 different stages are. Now, remember, the first stage of the production schedule, right, is increasing marginal returns. So this is where the graph is increasing, right? Then there's a point in which the graph decreases marginally, right? So it has diminishing marginal returns, but on the graph, it doesn't necessarily look like it's necessarily decreasing. Then do not get diminishing marginal returns confused with negative marginal returns. Okay, now those 3 are all 3 terms that you should know as well for chapter 5. Okay, now if your chart doesn't come out anything like this, make sure that you there's a column off to the side that you can customize this in order to make it look like this. And if it doesn't appear that way for you, then make sure that you email me and then I can help you out with that. But this is exactly what your production schedule, all right, your production curve should look like. So this is some pretty great stuff here, okay? So, but I just want this curve right here, right, this production curve, right, so that way you guys can, I can see that you guys are able to create a graph, all right, and also interpret it. But really, what you need to do in order to identify the stages of production is actually just the marginal product itself, okay? So we should know that stage 1, right, that is increasing marginal returns. And that is when the marginal product is increasing, okay? So if we see over here, at stage 1, all right, well, generally there has to be a start to this. Right now, it's just 0. So right there, I'm just going to type in stage 1. Our marginal product increased from there. It went from 0 to 7, okay? I say that is increasing marginal return, so that is stage 1. We went from 7 to 13. That also sounds like stage 1 to me. 13 to 18. It is still increasing, so therefore it's stage 1. In fact, we see that it goes 24 and 28. It keeps on continuing to increase. So we know that these next 2 steps, it is also stage 1. However, okay, once we get to 6 workers, we see that it goes from 28 to 20, which now means that the marginal returns or the marginal product has decreased. Not necessarily negative, it is decreasing. And we know that as stage 2. So right over here, we're going to put stage 2. So, in fact, from this point on, after the 5th worker, right, we see that our marginal product tends to decrease after that. So it says here, for every additional worker that you're hiring, you're actually becoming less productive. Okay, so we see now that, well, 5 workers is pretty much the peak amount of workers that you can have in order to be efficient as possible. So over here, stage 2 actually continues on to this part over here, to 10 workers, right? Because we have 4. But and that over here, you can see over here that at that point right here, that's about this part over here on the graph, right? You can see this is right here from about 0 to 5 workers, or 0 to 6, about 0 to 6 workers, 5 workers right here. This area right here, this is your stage 1, all right? Then from 6 to about 10 workers, this right here, this portion of the graph is your stage 2 of your production levels. Then you can see right here, after 10, that graph starts to go downwards. That means you're actually impacting negatively by hiring extra workers, and that is what we call stage 3 on here. So stage 3. So there you go. That's essentially what I want to see for this one right here. That kind of just wraps up what chapter 5 section 2 or lesson 2 was about. Now, so that's essentially what I want to see there. I kind of walk you through it, and you learned how to graph it, and you learned how about marginal product and stage of production. But it doesn't end there, because we have to continue on some more. We're going to go over to our next tab down below where it says profit maximization. This right here now is your this is what we're, if you're going to into McGraw-Hill and you get into chapter 5 lesson 3, this is what it's about. Okay, so businesses, right, they have to deal with their costs, their revenue, and their profit. Now, I recommend, I will try to find a video about those 3 things and upload it along with this as well. But I figured that you might have learned something like this in financial math already. You've probably done profit calculations, right? Or functions, or profit functions, right? Essentially, right, profit is the amount of money that you are making at the end after. So let's say, for example, you are selling chips at Carpinteria High School. You buy those chips for $1 and you're selling them for $2, okay? So your cost, right, of buying that chip, so your cost would be $1 for each chip, right? So your cost, your total cost is $1. If you're selling that chip for $2, $2 is not your profit. $2 is what we call our revenue. That means how much money you are making, right? Revenue. So you're selling your chips for $2, you now have $2. That is your revenue. However, your total profit is how much overall you made on top of that. So how you calculate profit is revenue minus cost. So how much money you've made minus the money that you had to spend in order to make that money. So how much money you made overall at the end of that, that is what is known as your profit. So please, students, do not get revenue and profits confused. Remember that profit is revenue minus cost. But you will get to know, right, that within your costs, there are 2 types of costs. There are fixed costs and variable costs, okay? So fixed costs means that this is a cost that you have that will never change over time. And then variable costs are costs that can change depending on how much of a resource that you're using or your productivity with something. For example, okay, a fixed cost could be something like a phone bill, right? You probably have to pay about, let's say, $45 for your phone bill per month. And no matter what, no matter how much you use your phone, no matter how much data you use, it will still be $45 each month, right? So that is known as a fixed cost, right? When you pay for your car, it is the same price each month. That is a fixed cost. No matter how much you use your car, it changes each month. Now, a variable cost, right? Because variable means that it can change. A variable cost would be something like a utility bill. So no matter how much, so right, or so depending on how much you use your internet, not necessarily your internet. An internet cost would be a fixed cost because no matter how much you use your internet, you have to pay the same amount of money. But a variable cost, right, would be like your electricity, right? So depending on how much you're using your electricity at home, that can change your bill each month. It depends. If you don't use your electricity that much in one month, your variable cost for that bill, right, will be very low. If you use it a bunch, then your costs are really high. So variable cost is dependent on how much you're using something. So that's kind of just to give you a gist of that. But you should already know that by completing the definitions in the first section here. So what we want to know here, students, is we want to find, right, where is the best, because when you're a business owner, you're trying to find where is the absolute best place to be, okay? And where that is where you're making the most profit. So what we're trying to do here is maximize our profit, because at some point on this production schedule, right, we can make the most money possible. If you're a business owner, that is absolutely your goal. If you're an economist, it is all about maximization. You're trying to maximize your utility, right, so you can get the most benefit. And if you're a business owner, you're trying to maximize the amount of money that you can make. If you are at a point, if you're a business owner and you're not making money, or you're at a point where you could be making more money, why aren't you there? You have to be in order to be a successful business owners. All successful business owners today, they have economists that have them do this kind of stuff so they can find out where is absolutely how much, what is the most amount of iPhones I need to make in order to make the most money, because at some point I'm going to be losing money, right? So let's figure that out. So first, let's look over here into this section here. You can see that I separated this problem into a few different sections. We have our production schedule, which we learned in Chapter 5, Lesson 2. We have our costs, right, which is the money that we're spending in order to make some money. We're investing something. Our revenue, remember, is how much money that we are making, and then our profit overall. And I have some of these things here at the bottom in order to help you understand what we're doing. So you can see here that everything that is in yellow here is what we're solving for. So we should know, remember, marginal product, right? Marginal product is our change in a total product, okay? So right over here, we've done this before. It's just this current one, right? The new product that you have minus the old one. So it is the change, it is your additional product that you are making by adding a new variable, such as number of workers in this case again. So we've done that calculation. I taught you how to do so. It's just the 7 minus the 0. So when you drag this thing down, you can see what it did. It just did 20 minus 7 this time. So it is how many extra products you made from hiring a new worker. So we're going to go ahead and drag this all the way down. Now you can see here that when you do drag all the way down, you see that it eliminates a line down below. That's okay. Your OCD can just be played later on when you can fix that thing up, okay? So you can see here, this is your marginal product, okay? Now, what we want to do, right, and why we calculated that is because we need that marginal product later on, okay, in order to calculate our marginal costs and our marginal revenue, okay? So we're going to head over here to total variable costs, okay? So your variable costs here, if you read down below, is that variable cost in this case is based on how many workers there are. Each worker gets paid $90, okay? So therefore, in order to calculate your variable cost in this case is dependent on how many workers you have. So at this first part right here, if you have 0 workers, that means you should be paying absolutely nothing, because when you press equals, right, and you go over to workers, right, times 90, okay, so all I did was press equals, go to number of workers times 90, and you get 0, okay, simple as that, okay. So now if you do that for the next one, right, equals 1 worker times 90, you have $90. Oops, and I accidentally messed that up right there. That's okay. If that happens to you, all you do is press Control Z or undo, and it should be simple as that. Great, perfect stuff. So you see over here, our variable cost at 1 worker is $90. I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this thing all the way down. Also, I like to represent my data in numbers, so I'm going to go ahead and make that a number and drop over the decimal points because I don't need to see those extra ones. And there you go. Okay. So this now you can see is that your fixed costs, they stayed the same no matter what throughout whatever amount of people that you have, because those fixed costs never change. What does change is your variable cost, and that was dependent in this occasion, right, was dependent on how many workers you had. So you can see over here our variable cost changed as we had more workers. Okay, so now we can finally calculate our total cost. Okay, now that total cost, why is that important to calculate? Because plays an important role when we try to figure out our profit. Okay, so our total cost is simple. We are just going to add our total fixed cost plus our total variable cost. Now this is a very simple function, students. All right, I want to teach. You could do this in two ways. You can go the total fixed cost plus your total variable cost, and that's your answer. But most of you guys would be getting to college, especially if you go on to become a business major or an econ major or many other type of majors, right? You will be expected to break down even more variable costs and more total fixed costs or different fixed costs and add those all up. So instead of just pressing the plus button, because if you have a whole bunch of them, you have to press equals plus this plus that plus that. It's sometimes you can also do the sum function. So if you can do equals sum, open up the parentheses and highlight your first column for your total fixed costs and your variable costs. What it does is that when you highlight a group of cells, it'll add them all up together. So I like to use the sum function, and especially because sometimes you don't know how many numbers you're going to be dealing with. So it's important for you guys to know at least the sum function. Okay. So our total cost, you can see here, is just 50 plus 90 in this case. So we're going to drag and drop all the way down to the bottom, and right over here we have our total cost. Now we're going to calculate our marginal cost, right? Because we want to be able to understand, well, yes, our costs might be going up, right? But there's probably a point on here in which our cost, right, is not affected as badly whenever we add on an additional worker. But however, marginal cost and marginal revenue, right, they're totally different when you have to calculate them. They're not necessarily just your change in cost, right? It is the change in cost as you add an additional worker, right? But it is based upon how much of your product that you're producing, okay? It is based upon how much of your product you're producing. So, because technically, if you're calculating marginal cost, you would have to do it for each individual product, right? You have to do it for each individual product, and that will give you marginal cost. But we're dealing with a whole bunch of products, so therefore, essentially, you don't want to necessarily get that mixed up. So over here, down below, I have the equation for marginal cost. All right, we have marginal cost is equal to your additional cost, right? So it is the change in your cost, right, divided by your additional output, okay? Because remember, it is dependent on each individual product that you made, okay? You can't just say that would be a whole different calculation if you were just to do the your new cost minus your old cost. That is not marginal cost. Marginal cost has to be divided by what is known as your marginal product. So you can see right here it says additional cost divided by additional output, also known as your change in cost divided by your marginal product. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. So in this first example, right, your marginal cost is 0 because you have nothing to compare it to, right? You can't do 50 minus something else. But you can see here, it's funny how even when you're producing nothing, your fixed cost is still 50, because even if you're not producing anything at all, you are still going to be losing money, so you better be making some money at all in order to cover those costs, right? Now, so what we're going to do here is we're going to do this function. We're going to press equals, right? We're going to calculate our change in cost. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to organize that little thing by opening up parentheses. Click on 140, that is your new cost, subtracted by your old cost, which is 50, close parentheses, divided by your marginal product. So our marginal product at this point right here was 7. Okay, so it should look, your function should look a lot like that. We're going to press enter, and right at this marginal cost should be 12.86. So make sure that you have that answer on there. Okay, so we should be confident about this function that we did on there. As long as you did it correctly and you got that number, then you can just drag and drop to the bottom. Boom, just like that. Just like easy as that, Excel or your spreadsheet has calculated all your marginal product for you, or all your marginal costs for you. And you can see over here is that eventually you get into negative marginal cost, which technically does not exist. That pretty much means, students, that at stage 3, this is exactly where you do not want to be operating. Okay, you do not want to operate in stage 3 if you're a business owner. But where is the best place to operate? Well, we're still going to figure that out because we are yet to calculate our marginal revenue. So here they've already given what our revenue is. So now we're going to calculate our marginal revenue. Okay. So our marginal revenue, however, is also, you can't just do 105 minus 100 in order to calculate a marginal revenue. Remember, it is based upon every product that you've made. So therefore, we're going to go ahead and do the calculation, which is a change in total revenue divided by the change in total output, which is also known as change in total revenue, right? So it is 105 minus 0, close parentheses, divided by your marginal product. So right over here, marginal product at this point is 7. Okay, so right here it's $15. So for every additional worker that you had, and that of the product that you made, and at every additional money that you made, for each product, you've made $15. So for every additional product that you make, pretty essentially, you make an extra $15. So essentially, you can see there that marginal revenue is even across the board, which tends to be a common case, but not all the time. So it just happened to work out that way. So therefore, now we calculated our marginal revenue, right? All right. So now, our marginal revenue, why it's important to calculate that is to make sure that you're in a good spot, essentially. And so but marginal revenue, economists use that for far more complicated things, more things that we're probably going to be covering here in our high school version of economics. So now it's time to calculate our marginal profit, okay? So remember, profit equals your total revenue minus your total cost. What we're going to do here is we're going to hit equals, and now we have our total revenue, right, minus, let's see, our total cost right here. Don't get it mixed up with your total fixed cost or total variable cost. Make sure you click on total cost. So there you go, negative 50. Wow, who knew? When you're not producing anything at all, you're still making less money. You have to spend money actually. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and format this because you can see we lost our lines there at the bottom, and I just like to make things nice and neat. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the lines right there. So you can see over here, this is our total profit at each individual point. So now you're thinking, Mr. Lopez, where is the best place to be then in that case? How many workers do you have to hire in order to make the most money possible? Okay, because yes, you might have figured out that that at stage 2 you might be diminishing in terms of your product that you're making, and stage 1, yes, you might be growing as a company. But remember, the best point when you own a company is not always when your company is growing. Sometimes it is when your company is steady. All right, when your company is doing steady. Okay, and at that point, right, is probably when you're making the most money possible. All right, so where does in this graph or this production schedule do you see on the total profit that you're making the most money? Well, you can see over here that it's about at this point right here. Okay, at stage 2, from 8 to 9 workers, you're making $1,300 at each month, or however much, or maybe a week, right? Because if you hire a 10th worker, right, you might still be in stage 2, right? However, you're making less money at the end of the month. So therefore, the answer for this one would be 9 workers. Okay, so at the 9th worker, that is where the best place that you want to be. So if you were the owner of this company and you're thinking, all right, in order to make the most money, how many workers do I need to hire? If you were an economist yourself and you can figure this out on your own, boom, now you figured out how can you make the most money. Otherwise, you will hire an economist to do this for you. In that case, those people are going to make a ton of money. All right, why hire somebody else when you can do this on your own? So that right there shows you that at 9 workers is where you're making the most money. All right, we would say stage 2 with 8 workers, but I think in terms of this, right, you can still grow because you can still be selling more products. So you can see right here, the more products that you're selling, right, the more it's going to be spread out there in the world, and you might be able to sell more of those things. It just so happened that in this occasion there was two answers with the profit maximization, but we always take this one right here. So take the second one because you're producing more products and you're hiring more workers. You have more cash flow in your business. Okay, so therefore, at 9 workers is where your answer is. Okay, perfect. I know that was a lot to cover, but we made sure that we got it on there. Okay, any questions that you have, we'll zoom it on Thursday. Okay, now it's time for your last activity, which is production activity. So this right here is essentially the same thing that we just did, but I want you to do, right, is I want you to solve for each yellow cell. So you can see here that along this entire thing, we've mixed around the data that we wanted to give you, but what I want you to do is calculate all those things in order to calculate your total profit. Afterwards, I want you to tell me, okay, at what number of workers, right, is your profit maximized. Okay, so figure out each yellow cell on here based off of the example that I showed you right before, and then I want you to tell me where is the best place in order to function here in terms of profit maximization. Where are you going to make the most money? The one thing that I also wanted to make sure I cover too is break-even point, right? You probably heard when you break even, that means that you're barely just making enough money in order to cover your cost, okay? So if you can see over here, your break-even point, right? If you see right here, at 1 worker, if you had 1 worker, you're actually losing money. So your break-even point essentially is when your profit equals 0. So somewhere in between 1 and 2 workers is your break-even point here, because we went from losing money to making money. So at least if you are a business owner, students, if you in the future want to own your own business, okay, at least if you're not on your profit maximization, please at least try to break even. That is how you can at least make a stable business. But a stable business is not is one, or more a successful thriving business is one that is maximizing their profits. That is why this part of this lesson is super duper important. Okay, so I think that covers everything in terms of what I want you to know for chapter 5. All right. So just complete this entire worksheet. Don't forget about your supply shifters and all of these definitions, okay? For increasing returns, diminishing returns, and negative returns, those are all different stages of production. You just got to tell me which stage is it at and what is happening in that. So just use your book to complete all these definitions. Your supply shifters, you can work on that. And don't forget to also work on your previous quizzes, okay? I have our quiz ready to go real soon for Chapter 5, Lesson 3. I will be dropping these 2 things at the same time. And I will also try to find a video on the different types of costs and whatnot to help you out to go along with this. Perfect. Okay, hope this video wasn't too long, but I really hope that it also helped you out with this worksheet. Good luck. This stuff is due Thursday, but I want you to make sure that you complete the quiz by Thursday too. Our Chapter 5 test will open up on Thursday and is due on Tuesday. Thank you so much, and I hope that everybody is staying safe.